Making yellow rice is a super easy side dish and it can go with so many different cuisines. Today I'm gonna make it for a chicken shawarma dish that I'm making, but you can make it if you're gonna serve some sort of a Spanish style stew or even a South African dish. It is a really versatile type of rice to make, and it starts with Basmati rice. And that I think is important. I think when you make yellow rice, you want the grains of rice to be separate and kind of a little bit on the drier side and a little fluffy. And Basmati rice fits that bill perfectly. So we're gonna start off with 2 cups of dry Basmati rice. Then we're gonna add in some flavoring, some seasonings, and some chicken broth. Now, you can make this in any type of appliance or on the stove that you like to use to make your rice. I'm gonna use the Ninja Possible Cooker Pro because it's just easy to do. I could do it all in one pot, from sauteing the butter and the rice and the seasonings to steaming it. So it works perfectly. But I'm not gonna use the steam function, and that is important. I'm gonna get into that a little bit later in the video. But first, let's go ahead and start toasting up our rice. For this recipe, you do not need to rinse your rice. I know a lot of people will say you always have to rinse your rice. You do not have to for this recipe. You can if you want to. But I just toast it up and it turns out perfectly. So whatever appliance you're using, you're gonna go ahead and turn it on. And then for this recipe, we're gonna go on sear saute on high, and I'm just gonna hit start. The Ninja Possible Cooker Pro is gonna go through a little bit of a preheat period. This is the time that I add in the butter and the rice and get it toasted up. So I'm gonna start with 2 tablespoons of salted butter. Now you could use unsalted butter if you wanted to, that's perfectly fine. And then I have 2 cups of the Basmati rice, which as soon as the butter melts, I'll add it in. For the basic yellow rice seasonings, you only need some turmeric and some salt. I have 1.5 teaspoons of fine ground sea salt, or you could use kosher salt. And I have 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric. And the turmeric is what's gonna give that yellow color. And you only need 1/2 teaspoon, trust me. The other thing I'm gonna tell you about turmeric is you want to be careful with what you're wearing because it can easily stain your clothes, your fingers, your cutting boards, all kinds of things, and even the spoon that you use. So this is my yellow rice spoon, basically, because it is colored yellow from the turmeric. Now, you can also add in other things. You could add in diced onions, you could add in bell peppers, spicy peppers, whatever you want. No problems. And you can add in different types of spices. For this, because I want it to be a side dish for my chicken shawarma. I don't want the spices to be overpowering, but I do want them to sort of complement the chicken shawarma marinade and the spices that are in that. So I am using 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin and 1/2 teaspoon of coriander. And that is all I'm gonna use in this recipe. If you wanted it a little bit spicier, you could add in cayenne pepper or chipotle pepper. You could add in smoked paprika for a smoky flavor. I mean, there's tons of things you can add in. So make the rice the way you wanna make it with all the seasonings that you love. But this is a good start with the turmeric and the salt. And then for shawarma, these 2 spices go really well. All right, I hear the butter melting, or at least starting to melt. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in this rice and move the butter around and sort of coat the rice as the butter melts. And we're gonna add in the seasonings as well. All right, so while that finishes toasting up and we let the preheat go all the way to the end to where it starts to say add food, let me explain why I'm not going to switch over to the steam function on this appliance. And that is because now we have the pot hot from the sear saute. And what I found when I was testing the recipe is that when I went to steam, because that would be my normal way to do rice is the steam function. When I switched over to steam, one time it told me to add liquid, even though I had plenty of liquid in there. And then the next time, it just didn't produce the steam to cook the rice. In fact, I had to stop the steam cycle, switch back over to sear saute. So I decided, well, it just wants us to use sear saute for this. That's gonna work the best. It's the easiest thing and you don't have to adjust anything, okay? So once the preheat time is done, it will say add food, you do nothing Okay, it'll go off on its own. When it says add food, that is when I'm gonna add in my liquid. For this ratio of rice, which is 2 cups of the basmati rice, I'm using 4 cups of liquid. That is a typical ratio, 2 to 1, for a basmati rice when you are doing it steamed or on the stove. If you're gonna take this recipe, convert it to a pressure cooker, you would go down to 1 to 1 1/4 cup of liquid, okay? So I'm using all chicken stock in this recipe. I've tried it a couple different ways. I tried it with 2 cups of chicken stock and 2 cups of water. It was delicious. I tried it with all water and I thought it was a little lacking. And I've tried it with 4 cups of chicken stock and it was delicious. So if you have 4 cups of chicken stock, because I get the big containers and that's the amount that's in there. So it makes it easy for me just to open it up and I can just dump it right in. Because ordinarily when I'm cooking, I wouldn't even need to measure it, just dump it in. So if you use that type of chicken stock, you can just dump in the whole container. It's 4 cups or 32 ounces. But if you only have a couple cups of chicken stock left over and you want to make this yellow rice, use 2 cups of the chicken stock and 2 cups of water. It works perfectly fine. Whoops. Well, sometimes that happens. All right, so we'll pick up our spoon that dropped in there and we will just mix this all around. And the add food has gone off. We have now started the count up. Okay, keep that in mind. A lot of times things will count down when we work with appliances. So they'll count down from 20 minutes, down to 0. This counts up, okay? So just take that into account when you're making your rice. Put the lid on, that's very important. Do not block the hole, that is very important too. We want the steam to escape. So what's gonna happen, the chicken stock is going to boil and then the rice is gonna start to absorb that liquid. The steam is gonna come out, which is part of the liquid evaporating. And then after about 8 to 10 minutes, the rice will be fully cooked and then we let it sit undisturbed for 5 minutes. That just lets it absorb any extra liquid that might be in there and give us that nice fluffy texture of the basmati rice that we want with separated grains of rice. This is not a sticky rice or anything that's clumped together. You will be able to see each individual grain of rice. It's beautiful and it is so easy to make. So it's been 8 minutes and it's time to check on the rice to see if it has absorbed enough of the liquid. So I remove the lid and give it a quick little stir. And it looks like it is almost done. I'm gonna let it go the full 10 minutes. We still have a significant amount of liquid here. So put the lid back on, let it go 10 minutes. And when the 10 minutes is up, I'm just gonna shut the appliance down. We don't wanna keep it on keep warm. We don't want any heat getting to it. We just wanna shut it off and then that rice will absorb the rest of the liquid over the 5-minute rest period and we'll have some beautiful fluffy basmati rice. And that looks gorgeous. Of course, you could garnish your rice any way you like. You could use fresh parsley, you could use fresh chopped cilantro, green onions, anything you want. But for my chicken shawarma, I'm just gonna leave it just like this because I happen to know it's amazingly delicious and it looks beautiful on the plate. Let's give it a little taste here in this bowl. Just grab a little bit. I mean, it is loose, fluffy, but not dry like it's gonna choke you or anything. I mean, it's really a beautiful texture. All right, let's taste for flavor. Wow. It's hard to believe that those simple spices make rice taste so delicious, but they do.